Right folks, we're back. It's been a while. I think the last video we did on here was a little welding table build. Check that out, there's 3DXFs and all that. So this is my DIY attempt at a CNC plasma table. It's not very big, I'd say it's a little under 3x3ish cutting area. So I've been on this for the last 2 or 3 weeks I'd say, and the bottom half of the table took me a matter of hours to knock up, but then these carriages were an absolute ball ache, and I think this is version 3 or 4, and I've ended up settling on these. They're not pretty, but I like to use the excuse form follows function and all that, so I'm sticking with those, and they'll work just fine. So I'm just going to go through it, and I also want to gauge whether it's worth me doing a build video on this, because there's not really much welding on this at all. So I've designed it in a way that it's basically as much plug and play as possible. So for instance, the carriages are all tab and slot, and I'll probably just fuse them with a bit of TIG. I'll tell a lie. There's also a little bit of welding on the corners of this water pan, but I've only just recently learned how to use the folding tools in CAD and the flange tool. There's still a bit of learning to do on my part though, because I'm not sure why there's such a gap left on those corners, but I'm happy with that. But I think what I'll do is I'll probably run a copper block down the middle and run a weld down the outside, and that'll be the water pan. So the reason I've built it this way is for the last 3 or 4 years I've had this 60/60 extrusion and this 20mm rail kicking around doing nothing. I did buy it all for a bigger machine I planned to build, and then I scrapped the idea, and there it sat. So being adamant I wanted to use this in the build, that's kind of dictated what you see. So the stuff I've got's got holes in the top. What I really should have done is gone for a larger rack with holes going through the tooth side. That would have made for a much easier build, and probably easier carriages as well, but as is I'm having to put that on this angle. That's those 3 bits out of the way. So moving on to these carriages, like I said, they're all tab and slot. We've got the 2 bearing blocks, 20mm rail. We've got the gearbox and steppers spring tensioned, so the end of this spring will hook round that bolt. I've got to slot those holes just to give me a bit of adjustment. So the spring mechanism will pull this 15 tooth pulley against the rack you see there, and they're both module 1.5. so that's the carriage. We've got this little M8 bearing block here. I can't take credit for the use of that. If I remember the name of the channel where I saw this in use, I'll link it down below, but I really like that and I thought I'm having that. So little 8mm pillar block or bearing block, whatever you want to call it, and that's going to work for me just fine. So nice touch there. Now I almost forgot about this overhang you see here. So what's happened here is, because of the way I've designed these carriages, I've had to settle for this overhang at the back, because originally this leg was all the way back here, but then once I'd bring this all the way back, I had like 150mm of redundant table and water tray. That explains the overhang, just in case you was wondering why it looks a bit goofy. The stepper motors are Nema 23, I think they're 425 ounce, and we're having closed loop all round. And these little gearboxes, they're 5:1 ratio. Right, so we've got the same deal with that gearbox and stepper, no need to go through all that. But this carriage was an absolute nightmare. So the y-axis you see here is 1 block top and bottom, 20mm rail again. So what I originally hoped to do was use 1 block and 1 rail on the top and be done with it, because this z-axis is not that heavy at all. But once I started banging the Nema 23 on the back in its gearbox, started to think I was asking too much of this bearing block, so I've bung one on the bottom there. So this entire z-axis, obviously minus the weaver rail and the scope mount, I bought online and I thought it was fairly cheap. There's a profile rail on there and it's a real 1605 ball screw. Comes with stepper and coupler, but I'm going to do away with the stepper and put a closed loop Nema 17 on the top. But the way I've designed this is, because it's got a slot running down the length of it, all I've done is bang these 2 bolts there, and I can slacken them off and adjust this entire thing. And obviously I've got further adjustment with that, but I do need to take 32mm off the bottom of this ball screw. So yeah, I'll link as much as I can down below so you can get a look at it. So that's the carriages out the way. we've got to look at the water pan. These 40 by 5mm, I think they are, bars going all the way round. They're just going to act as like kick plates, if you like. The slats I'm going to be using are just 50 by 3mm, dirt cheap. In 7m lengths where I get them from, that's dirt cheap. I'll just chop them up. So they're the slats. Quickly going back to this water pan, that's 2mm thick and 100mm deep. Right, so what else is there? Now the plasma torch here is just a mock-up. What I'll do is use the handheld version that comes with the plasma cutter, and that is something I bought over a year ago. And it's a CNC ready by BestArc, so only a cheap and cheerful, but it should get me started. Now the legs, like everything else, they'll have to be laser cut and folded, and I'm wondering whether I could save myself a few quid by just going for straight 100 by 100 by 5mm angle iron and running it straight down. And obviously I'd have to do a bit of a taper at the top here. Wondering if that would be a cheaper option, but I will find out first how much these legs are going to cost to be cut and folded. Right, what else is there? Ah yeah, I did get OCD and fill this thing up with a coolant. I did read up a little bit on something called Borax the other day that prevents rust and whatnot and your water fouling. But what I plan to do with this water pan is put a tap, run it to a barrel so I can drain this after use, and I'll use a 12-volt pump, pond pump or something, just to fill it back up. Right, so we've got that out of the way. I've got a load of these proximity sensors. I'm going to figure out where I want to fit them. They're on the way, and the controller I'm using for this is MyPlasm, as well as their Torchlight controllers. So check them out, because with that there's no need for Mac 3. It comes with the software, and it also comes with a mini CAD that's free as well. Also, with me being totally new to this, I knocked up my first sign in CAD, but what I did, I cheated. I used Copilot and asked them to draft me a sign that read BuzzBox Fab YT, and this is what it came up with. Then I took it to Inkscape, and then from there I went to Autodesk Inventor. Well, I think I've just about covered everything on this. You'll have to let me know if I've left anything out. Fire away any questions you might have. Right, so that's my little CNC plasma build. Now, I think I said earlier, I'm all about gluing bits of metal together on the weekend. But like I said, there's not a great deal of welding on this at all. And what I might do with the welding that does need doing is I'll just drag the TIG out and fuse everything, and the rest just bolts together. So I'll link as much as I can to the bits I've used and where I bought them. There will be affiliate links down below. Right, I think I've covered everything now. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and hit that hype button if you see it. I've not seen it yet, but there's something called a hype button. Right, that's your lot.